We're back to talk about the impact of the EU and the U.S. downgrade on Thailand and its influence potentially on the listed companies here in the Thai stock market. And of course, to talk about that with me is Kun Thanong Kantong, the editor of Now 26 and the Nation Group. Sawasdee ka.
Sawasdee ka.
Well, today I think we're continuing on with the saga of what to do with the opinions of the Americans and the Europeans. What to do, oh dear. And and it's, I mean, we've heard from various sectors, various factors, but in your opinion, how do you think it is in terms of the economic sector, the listed companies?
Yeah, I think it's the situation appears to be deteriorated, given a series of pressures or further statement, from European Union, the U.S. position, and now the U.K. government, might be, having a more strongly, worded statement, against Thailand, and we have to wait and see whether this ramification, will have a spillover effect, into the business or into the private sector, given the fact that Thai exports, quite substantial, more than 10%, about 10% going to the European Union, and quite a substantial amount of that also going to the U.S. market.
All right, so let's talk about it with Kun Pipat Narumitchai, excuse me, the Assistant Managing Director of Patra Securities. Sawasdee ka. We've talked about it. I think you've probably heard what we were saying. How has the United States downgrade of the TIP report as well affected certain listed companies such as CPF and TUF?
Definitely, I think there's a negative sentiment over the stocks. I think over the past week you have seen the market, at least for these two stocks, which are the key players in the food and the exporting food processor in the stock market, has been hit sharply earlier in the week. And so far, I would think the direct impact has been limited because, as you can see, that there's no direct measures against the private sectors. Both for the U.S. and Europe so far has been the sanction against the government, and we still waiting to see what kind of sanction they would have on the government, but there's no direct sanction against the private sector. So far, it's only the private sector initiative itself that discouraged some of the trade for these private companies, as we see like a couple of weeks ago where Carrefour in France declared that they would stop importing some of the shrimp from CPF. That's kind of the example of unilateral.
What about this example? I mean, we've heard today that Whole Foods in the United States and Carrefour, as you just mentioned there, are planning to take the products of CPF off their shelves. So is that going to have an impact?
Definitely there would be some impact, but whether or not that would be significant portion of CPF operation that remains to be seen, because if you look at the export as a source of revenue for CPF, I think that's significant to some extent. I think it's range around like 20%, I believe, and most of the exports, like at least a significant portion of those exports go to big retailers like that, but not all of the exports go to the big retailers like that. So the risk is these big retailers would be compelled to boycott some of the Thai products. That's the risk that we have to keep monitoring.
Okay. Over the next 3 to 6 months, do you think that relations between Thailand and the United States or the European Union, will improve or not, or what exactly do the U.S. or the European want, from Thailand, given the fact that the military government, has made it very clear that they have a timetable, for setting up a new government or forming a legislative body or a reform council, and election, would come to pass, over the next 15 months or so?
I would say that that's two separate things, right? On the U.S. issue that affect the Thai exporting industry, that's about the trafficking in humans in person. So the tip report, right? That's about the failure of the government to implement some of the laws or execute some of the laws. So those are the pressure on trading, trafficking in person. But the pressure from the EU right now is more on the politics, which I would say it's hard to imagine that it would improve in the short term unless the NCPO has the clearer guideline in terms of the roadmap to return to democracy, which so far the European Union have expressed the discomfort against the roadmap that has been declared.
Okay. So what should be the appropriate measures, for the Thai government, in response, to the pressure from the U.S. and the EU, and also, from the private sector side, how should, they prepare themselves, to meet, the tough time ahead?
Right. I think about the trafficking in person issue, I think that's probably easier to respond than the political issues, because like for the trafficking in person, if we believe that's not the right thing to have in Thailand, then the government at least have to beef up the implementation and probably have to draft some legislation to prevent that from happening. So if we can prove to the world that the situation in Thailand has improved, then there would be less case to protest against Thailand for that issue. But for the political issue, I think that's more complex and have to be be monitored closely as well.
Okay. Well, lastly, let's end it with the economic situation here. Other than the situation with the TIP report, we are also seeing, of course, the effects of the shrimp industry that had been plagued by an epidemic. They have suffered in that field. Also, labor cost has increased. Now, I've seen various reports saying that the United States market is not that significant. They are going to diversify themselves. Is that the way that the companies will take?
Yeah, definitely. I think so far the improvement in terms of the disease condition has not improved significantly, but we expect that to get improved over time, right? In terms of the exporting market, I think the best way to alleviate the problem is to diversify the market, just to reduce the concentration risk from these markets that surely would be impacted.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kun Pipat, for being with us here.
All right, thank you.
สวัสดีค่ะ
Thank
ขอบ
you
คุณ
ครับ
ค่ะ That is the Assistant Managing Director of Pata Securities there, giving a realistic report. Let's just be realistic about it, because it is going to have an impact on the shrimp industry. I mean, it has other challenges as well. The sector has been suffering an epidemic. It has been suffering from increasing labor costs. So they will have to diversify. But I don't know how much of an extent.
We are not sure whether the U.S. or the EU, will come up, with additional reports, against Thailand or not. But because all of these things, you have to understand that it has more to do with political. It's not about the trade issues. It's not about the human rights issue, but it's about the overall political change in Thailand that goes into the direction that both the EU and the US, are not happy, with what was going on in Thailand. So that's why
the TIP report, though, I just have to mention there, though, but the TIP report, though, was a long-term report. I think that it was, parallel to the situation, and a lot of people are saying that it's just poor timing.
But the decision, to downgrade, the situation in Thailand, to the level similar to North Korea or Iran, I don't think that's acceptable.
Okay, well, what are your comments on the latest actions from the United States? I believe yesterday they have also further cuts in the military funds.
But I don't think that they will go so far as to cancel, the Cobra Goal, which is the military exercise that the U.S. and Thailand and other allies in the region, have been conducting, over the years, using Thailand, as the playground or in the simulation, for the military exercise. If that is the case, then that will tilt the geopolitical gravity
I mean,
in
I
this
don't know.
region. Given the fact that yesterday, you remember the ambassador of China and his whole team,
gave his full support.
Made his way to visit, our military representatives, of the government. So the military is, the Chinese, are playing, the winning card, at this moment, when the U.S. or the EU seems to be trying to distance themselves, from Thailand.
Okay, and with that, we'll have to end it. We could talk about it further, but that's all the time we have for you today. Of course, you can stay tuned at 12:30 tomorrow. We'll be back, or you can always watch back our interviews on my Twitter account at @chao._now26. Up next is the Thai news.